Hello, I'm once again Leslie Smith with the Second Act Business Summit. Thank you so much for being here. Right now, I am with Christine Campbell Rappin, and she has had an amazing career in marketing. And I'll let her tell you a little bit more about that, but fascinating stuff that she's done. And she is a global business growth expert. And I do mean global. She has great stories to tell, and she is going to tell us how to find the buyers for us. So, Christine, why don't you go into that phenomenal career that I'm so envious of and impressed by.
Well, it's impressive when you read the highlight reel, but I will tell you there were lots of grenades in the moment.
Oh, fun.
And I started my early career in marketing and I got kicked out of marketing by the marketing peeps because I kept saying it has to be more than pretty. Pretty should be a given. And they're like, pretty is the game. I'm like, salespeople don't buy pretty. And eventually I found myself in sales. So what makes me really successful today helping business owners find clients is I know how to connect the what do I say to how do I get paid. And that's the piece that's often missing. It's marketing has to be effective at pulling the buyer from I'm curious to here's my credit card. And I always joke because people say, well, I hired you to figure out what to say. And I said, don't worry, we will do that. But more importantly, we're going to know what to say, why to say it, when to say it, how to say it, because the real measure of whether you think you were successful comes down to I get to serve the people I want to serve and I got compensated for it. And so my favorite thing in life right now is that I really get to help people, particularly people in the second act, commercialize their ideas, love the people they work with, support. And guys, if business isn't fun and it doesn't feel like oxygen, you're not building something that's cool and awesome. And maybe we should do that instead.
Well said. I love that. Commercialize your ideas.
Yes.
That tells you. And sometimes people are super altruistic. And so they forget about that piece of you have to invoice for that now. Oh, but I
Yes.
really like them.
It's like you can like them and still be paid. It's
Yes.
being
And they
called, being hired,
expect,
the must hire, not just a likable expert.
yes, and you gum things up if you don't let money transfer and rotate through this world. So very good. So what are the two things that predict your revenue in the next 90 days?
Well, first off, I want everyone to take a giant deep breath in and exhale because you heard her say two. So Leslie, there's only two. And this is the thing that I think a lot of people are gamified. There's a lot of people who will tell you you need a million things. And I'm calling BS. And that BS comes with $1 billion of sales activity behind me. So I actually know a thing or two. And it's only two things. So if you can commit to doing two things, you can build a really successful business. Because what I believe, and it's on the wall here, business growth is elegantly simple. It's not effortless. But the first thing that you need to know, and nobody really tells you this black and white, is your business is built on strangers.
Mm.
Okay. You might have a great network and you might come from a professional background and you might have people you believe will support you. At some point, that will tap out if it even starts in the first place. And so you need to know that you need to commit to getting in front of new people more ways, more often, always. This isn't just the thing that starts in your business, it's the thing that sustains your business. And recognizing in the stranger who's a buyer is a really big muscle we must build. So, strangers is number one, the volume of them and the quality of them. Second piece of the puzzle is nothing happens in the business if you don't make the offer. And a lot of people think, well, it's evident what I do, or they'll just come find me and they'll just trip over themselves and open their wallet. I've never seen it yet, but if it happens, please phone me and tell me because I would love that story. The truth is, you must lead the offer, which means you need to learn how to make an ask. And not all offers are the ultimate offer, which is, do you want to purchase this? Do you want to invest? There's a lot of asks that happen first. It's, can you reach agreement? Can you reach influence? And can you reach stepping stones that lead you to the ultimate ask? But if you never ask, and a post on social media, buy my stuff, is not an offer in my eyes. But we must get our ask on, and the amount of asks we make really will predict our revenue. And if you don't have enough strangers and you don't have enough offers, I will tell you it's no surprise you don't have enough revenue and you don't have enough clients. And so we track that to start. And almost everybody, including myself, even at this stage, has moments where I'm like, I have zeros on the board. And I go, I can't stay at zero if I really want to be having a stable income and building a business that supports my lifestyle.
That's very interesting. Strangers. We haven't heard that yet in the summit. So, and it makes sense. Now, and I've always said and learned it's repeat and referral. So those strangers in my mind come from referral sources, but you're saying maybe not so much that
They
they're
can. And I love referrals. And guys, referrals to me are awesome. You know, borrowing somebody else's authority, having somebody introduce a warm lead is gorgeous. I also recommend you reward that in lots of ways, starting with thank you.
right. That's the easiest way.
That's the easy way
Yes.
to start. But I really, really work with clients to move beyond the referrals because referrals can be a great thing. But to me, they should be popcorn like a snack, not the main meal.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you want to move beyond the referrals, you need to recognize that, yes, a referral is still a stranger to you. You're
Oh,
not a
that's
stranger to
true.
them, but they're a stranger to you. And if you want to create stability, I would move one step, one chapter beyond referrals, because you might be recognizing that if you're just the simplest marketing skill you have is just awareness and just like looking and observing the world. Because no matter where you are in any given day, you could find your next client. They could
Mm-hmm.
be the person in the lineup at Starbucks. They could be the conversation you overhear in the grocery store. They could be somebody you overhear in a networking meeting. Like if you're observant, recognizing that I have to be curious about other people are the success measure for your business. You know, you can have a great idea, but if nobody buys it and they're a stranger to start with, I don't know how this else works.
Great. Great answer. Very insightful. So I knew you'd be fantastic in the summit. So now, when you're looking at all these strangers and getting referrals, how do you get through to find the people that are really going to buy and are not just tire kicking, so to speak?
Yeah, there's a really important thing to talk to, and it's about buyers are a couple of things. The first thing I want you to like post-it note, put it on your forehead, put it on every workspace is a buyer is a decision maker.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so tire kickers are not decision makers. They're looking and they're curious and they're explorers, but they're not yet at the place of decision making. And so when I coach my clients to search for the buyers, buyers have three things. I know I have a problem. Because I have a known problem, I have probably tried to solve it, which means I bought something in the past. And that doesn't always mean money, but maybe I Googled it, Pinterested it, YouTubed it. Maybe I went to a summit. Maybe I sought resource from communities. Maybe I listened to a podcast. Like there's a million ways they could have done something, but the fact they've done something indicates buying behavior. But there's a truth which says, I'm still not satisfied with my result. And so your job is to tap into the dissatisfaction and what would improve it incrementally. Like people aren't trying to buy a unicorn. They're trying to get a little bit better results than what they have now. And the third thing is they have to be committed. Because here's the thing that we often miss. Just because I have a known problem and I'm trying to solve it doesn't mean I'm actually committed to solving it. A lot of people love their comfort zone. And so it's really important that we ask those three questions. We assess these three questions. And if we have these three questions satisfied, only then does an offer make sense. That's money. If they're not really sure, we still have an invitation, but we don't need to talk money because money's premature. Because when somebody reaches a decision-making moment, I have a problem, I need to solve it, and I'm committed to doing something resource-wise, time, money, bandwidth, all of those apply. There's a real truth to it. There's only two choices. Again, think about how elegantly simple this is. I have two choices. I keep my problem, and some people will do that, or I solve it. And you must ask, this is where the offer comes in, do you want to solve this? If you want to solve this, I will recommend something. And when I recommend something, I'm the nearest solution they have. I'm not the only solution they have. But if I understand what they believe the problem is, I believe I can satisfy their curiosity. It's right for me to lead an offer and to ask boldly, do you want to move forward with investment?
Mm-hmm.
And when you keep it this simple, there's no pressure. There's no convincing. And what we recognize in business is that my job is not to judge whether you want the solution. My job is to ask if you want it. And I can increase the volume of times I ask by meeting more strangers, recognizing who's the buyer, and increasing my activity and my effectiveness. And when I do that, guess what? I have a really stable business because it starts to feel like popcorn. I'm all about snacks, as you can tell, because more and more people warm up to tell me what it's like to work with you. I'm now ready to make a decision and I'm trying to decide between A and B. And your job at that point is counsel. Tell me why you should hire me. Tell me why I'm here having this conversation with you. What does success look like? What has been the problem? Yes, based on what you're telling me, I think option A is the best next step to solve the problem.
So many things are coming to mind. So my husband's
Hey,
a mortgage broker, and then he will get those people who it's their hobby just to call him once a quarter and find out what the rates are and what deals he can get. And then sometimes, and well, there's one in particular that was just serial shopper, and
mm-hmm.
it was years, and I don't even know that my husband ever got his loan. And I do know that sometimes people would go, oh, I ended up with my credit union. Why? Well, they sent me something at the time I was going to make the decision. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so they don't, it doesn't matter that you maybe have been courting them for a long time. And I do say people sort of become nose blind to you in networking groups. Like, you have to be, I would really love to work with you. You have to at least,
You have to be explicit and you
yes,
cannot
yes.
and direct. And again, this is people always ask me, are you always this direct? I said, yes, because I'm not tied to this emotionally. Like, but I'm always really clear. And this is to your husband's circumstance, like before you just vomit the pricing,
Mm-hmm.
you should really be asking somebody, are you here to make a decision?
Uh-huh.
And
And
that may seem like a really foreign question. You're like, but it's obvious they called me. It's like, no,
no.
they could be a tiebreaker or a buyer. And your job is to spend more time with buyers. And if it feels like you're looking for a needle in a haystack, you are. Buyers are only on average 2 to 5% of the population on any given day.
Mm.
Before you start to cry and go, holy crap, this is a lot of work. Here's the beautiful thing I love about compound interest. It's 2 to 5% today, 2 to 5% tomorrow, 2 to 5% the day after. And it's different buyers every day. To your point, when they were ready to make a decision, somebody else was the proximity to the outcome. Your job is to build, I call it a client growth engine, so that I don't work 24/7, but I'm prepared to receive a client 24/7. And we build the systems and we know what we're looking for. And we plan for this.
Sure. And I'm sure that's in your foundation. So,
100%.
what are those? You said three non negotiable portions of the foundation to get to this client growth. So, what lay them on us?
Lay them on. So every business owner must build these 3 skills. Okay. So these are non-negotiable in my mind. You might not start with them. That's totally cool. Most of us did not. The first thing is the ability to understand who your buyer is. So I told you what a buyer was, but you get to choose that moment of intersection. What's going on? What do they want? What makes you the right person to say, I have got an option? But you get to choose that. And if you do not choose it, I'm not talking about niching. I'm not talking about she's Betty Lou. She lives in Boise, Idaho. She got 2 dogs and a cat. And she calls them this. That's a marketing element that's important, but it's not buyer behavior. You're like, you need to understand what triggers. I'm in a line in the sand and I can't stay here. And that's a moment. That's not a vertical. That's not a niche. But you have to first define this for yourself. And you can change it over time. But if you're not clear, you won't recognize that by observation and hearing, the guy in front of me is my next client.
Mm-hmm.
That's the muscle we're building. So that's the first one. Who is your buyer? What's the moment you want to intersect? Number 2, how will you invite people from curious to tell me what the offer is? This is strategy. And I think there's 4 key questions. Who are you? Where do you want to play? What makes you awesome in that space? And how will you do this? How will you get it vocal? How will you get visible with it? I don't care what marketing tactic you want to use, they all work. But the tactic is useless if you haven't planned for how will I ask. And if you haven't committed to every day my job is make asks, it doesn't move. And that's really where this stagnant energy and the why isn't it working comes into play. But you have to have a plan to move somebody from curious to paid client. And that's step number 2. Non-negotiable here, guys. Third thing is you have to be really clear what makes you a must hire. And this is not about ego. This is about being able to communicate to the person on the other side who is a buyer. What do they need to see, feel, and experience to trust you to guide them to the result? So that comes to, do I like them? Do I believe they're credible? And what do I care for their character? And so often what I see, especially in new entrepreneurs, which is who I serve, we're like, we educate. And I'm not saying don't educate, but if you don't educate to the intent to work to solve, you become the friend. People clap, but they don't hire you. And staying there is dangerous. So I think it's really important. The non-negotiable number 3 is I'm clear that I'm commercializing my knowledge, expertise, and guidance. And I'm clear with what makes me the must hire. And I don't talk about what I do. I talk about what I serve in the lens of the buyer. And this is something we often can lose sight of the longer we're in business because we make it about who we're serving now. But the problem is your next client isn't in the same place as a decided mind. Your next client is in the deciding phase. And so we really need to make sure that we're seen as the must hire. And we tell people, guys, you think you're telling people that you're in business and you're not. If somebody can't tell you what your program name is, why they should refer you, why people hire you, you're not talking about it enough. And you're not talking about it in the lens of the buyer. And that's where the movement starts. And I think movement's the key. You can choose your speed at which you want to grow your business. You can choose the volume of clients you want to serve. You can choose the revenue you want to create. But it always starts with inviting the buyer to move. These are not
Fantastic.
negotiable. Yeah,
So,
you got to have them.
so and new businesses often struggle to get clients, and
100%.
they do what you're saying. They make it pretty. I have a beautiful brand. I have this great program, and I've engineered every single element of it. And it's all, when we start, it's all a hypothesis.
Yes.
But what can a struggling new business do to get those first clients?
I think it's really simple. And so you notice a theme. I don't like complexity. And I will tell you, it's not just, so take also a deep breath here. It is not just new businesses that struggle with this. A lot of my clients have been in business 8 or 10 years. And I had a great client of mine recently who said, like, I've been in business 8 years. I don't think I ever knew what a lead was.
Oh, interesting.
And now I have a lot more stability in my business because I realized I can distinguish the buying behavior, and I'm really more methodical about who do I spend time with and who do I prioritize. But the simplest way to find clients is conversation. Okay, this is, again, don't complicate it. It's not an email funnel. It's not going to be your logo. It doesn't really even matter what you call your program. Truthfully, none of that matters. I think you could ask half my clients what program they bought and they still wouldn't tell you, and they've been clients for a long time.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
They're buying the result. So your best, simplest way to find your next client is to ask questions and be curious to understand what's going on. If you believe that there's some curiosity about solving the problem, you can say, I've got an idea. Would you be open to hearing it?
Mm-hmm.
And then when you talk to somebody and you make some suggestions or recommendations, you say, what do you like about that? And then you let them respond. And when they say that, you said, people hire me to solve that. Would you be interested in me making you an offer?
Nice.
I made you an offer. Would you make a decision? Because if you're ready to make a decision, let's talk the money and the brass tacks of how to do this. But this is simple, and you don't need the noise. And please, I don't think you need the noise ever.
Cutting through noise, very important. Earlier
Very
you
important.
said that the buyer's journey, so to speak, they have done some research. They've gone to Google or someplace. How do you know that as the
I
seller?
ask. Yeah, this is simple. I ask. So when anybody comes into my space, I'm like, why are we here? Because if you found me, chances are you followed a rabbit trail of something. Like Google would tell you, on average, it's called the Zmont. Guess if I'm talking to the Canadians or the Americans, they will research 7 to 12 touch points before they're visible to you. And then they're going to research another 7 to 12 touch points before they make a buying decision. So that's why that moving somebody from curious to paid client and really thinking about what they're looking for is critical to the success of an engine. But you ask them, why are we here? What are you looking for? Why do you think I'm capable, desired, possible as a solution? What have you tried? And I'm really, really reassured when someone says, well, I hired somebody and it was a disaster. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not saying I'm a disaster because I know that I'm really effective at what I do. But I'm like, why wasn't it right for you? What did you try? What worked? And I'm just curious. This is where that simple conversation, that's where be brave enough to talk to a stranger, because the more you're curious about somebody else, the easier it is to talk and ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll ask, what did you try? And I'm like, and what makes this different? What makes you believe right now you're in a different place? This is a different program. I'm a different mentor. Why? Help me understand what's going on. They'll tell you if they're ready to buy. And I always recognize in my brain, and I keep a post-it note on my workspace. They have two choices: decide to solve it today or decide to solve it some other day. And I also know that if they don't decide to do it today, I make the invitation. I know my business will still be here in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year. I'm going to keep inviting you to events. You can keep listening to my podcast. You can keep hearing me in your ear, because what I'm saying is true and you know it, or you wouldn't be here. More importantly, you always can come back to me when you're ready. And I always jokingly say, like, there's a safe word, which is I need help. And I people who come in months or years later and say, you told me at the time if I didn't solve and commercialize this, I would still keep educating. And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, I'm still educating. I'm like, great. Are we done educating and now want to actually solve the problem? They're like, yes. I'm like, great. Let's talk about where we are, what's going on. And I go right back. I don't make any assumptions. I let them talk, because a big thing about your buyers is, you're on the same side of the table as your buyer. You're not adversarial. I understand your spin. I've likely walked your spin. And I'm inviting you to change directions. And I'm also inviting you to hold my hand when we walk in that new direction together. And so it is simple. Don't assume, and say, what did you try? What did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? And if you're right now in the moment to try to solve it, am I the only one you're looking at?
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm looking at two other resources. Okay, what do you like about them? What is their offer compared to mine? And sometimes it's also going to be a great market research opportunity, because they might say they include this, which is really compelling to me. And if I can operationalize that, I will.
Yeah. Or it's a keyword and you're like, I invented that, but they they use it differently. It's like, well, that goes without saying. You think it goes without saying. Like, nothing goes without saying.
Nothing goes without saying. But if I also know I could add it, I know I'm the nearest proximity to the yes. I'm like, well, if I could add that in, would you make the yes today? Great. So I can add that in. And how do you want to pay?
Savvy, very savvy. Now, do you find, and I've had this experience on the other end, I'll tell you in a minute, but I want to know what you think about this. Do you need to remind your clients, like, look at the progress we've made? See, have you enjoyed this? Do you, would you refer me, that kind of stuff? Do you do that sort of recap so they remember?
You must always be selling your clients. And I just had a client of mine who lost a business because he didn't do this key critical step. And it brought it to the surface, which now means, of course, all my clients are back in this conversation with me. Every time you're meeting with a client, you're reselling them that this is a good decision. Mm-hmm. You're intentional about this, not just when you need testimonials and referrals, not just when you're near wrapping up your thing, because you also at the start want to set what are success measures. Mm-hmm. You want to talk about, here's the progress I'm seeing, because you will see progress at a level that they won't see. And for my case, like, people hire me to actually solve this mystery of how do I commercialize something. Mm-hmm. So I'll talk about the ultimate win is I won a new piece of business, but there's a lot of wins before that final win, such as I found a stranger. I got the phone number of the stranger. I actually talked to the stranger. I actually determined that stranger could be a buyer. I saw the behavior. I invited them to have a conversation. All those are micro wins along the way. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, do you see the progress of what you did today versus what you did 6 months ago when you didn't know how to do this? Mm-hmm. So, like, I see it working. And I know when I'm winning with my clients, when they go, I see it working. And I recognize it's not moving at the speed maybe I want, but their speed judgment isn't on me as their mentor. It's on, I have an opportunity to move myself. And that's often where, that they need that continued accountability, because they're like, I need to be around people who are moving faster, because while I see it working now, I'm still having that truth conversation of my volume of activity doesn't meet my financial needs. Mm-hmm, the number of strangers I'm having doesn't convert to enough offers. And I said, this is business math. This is very basic. We have to track this.
Right.
But you must resell your client and show them the wins. And you must, I hope you do this because I think it's so important. You must ask them to celebrate the progress.
Yes.
Because as entrepreneurs, especially when we're wobbly and new, all we see is the mountain. All we see is the gaps. And I'm like, I want you to celebrate every moment. And so one of the things we do with our clients frequently is, I want you to have a list of 50 ways you're going to celebrate things. Mm-hmm. And I tell my clients, you could phone me, text me, call me any hour of the day with a win, because I want you to see your own progress. Mm-hmm. And when people say I'm overwhelmed, because, to the point the world has sold you complexity. and telling you that business has to be really complex. I'm hoping today this is illuminating for all of us listening. It's actually really simple, but what's really, really important in this is that you choose to do this because it feels like oxygen,
Mm-hmm.
and
I
you
love that.
celebrate your journey, and that you recognize overwhelm is one thing for me, and it's going to be slightly controversial. So take another deep breath. Christine's coming at you hard. It tells me you're not making decisions.
Oh, oh,
Overwhelm is simply, I am not making decisions. And I will tell you, there's no perfect decision. And if you want a buyer to make a decision, you have to lead making decisions for them. They have to you have to model it for them. But what matters most, not is whether the decision is right or wrong, is that you commit to making it right. So
mm-hmm.
whenever you make a decision, it's like, I'm going to learn from this. I'm going to grow from this. I'm going to follow through with what I said and learn something new and then make a new decision.
Mm-hmm.
But overwhelm, I think, is entirely a choice of delayed decision making. So make a decision and guide others to make decisions. And I know the big ripples happen when we do.
Write that down, everybody. Put that on your
I
post-it
know,
note.
oh God, that's really uncomfortable.
So that
True.
whole keep selling to your clients is so important. I
Yeah.
had like 3 clients that I got were big agency rebounds to my little PR consulting business, and they were big clients and great clients. I loved them, but they came to me and they said, "We're paying all this money and they're not doing anything, and anything we want to do costs a fortune." Okay, they had. I start looking through and I'm like, "Well, who did your website? Because it's gorgeous." And they're like, "Oh, they did." I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, who did these sales sheets? They're beautiful. They're I love this. Your salespeople must be very proud to take this out to their clients. Oh yeah, they do. They love them. Who did that? The agency.
Mm-hmm.
Who did everything? The agency had done phenomenal work, and they were paying a flat fee every month. And I think what the agency needed to do, which I always do, is do a little recap, even if it's on the invoice. These are the things we did this month. And especially when you're in a retainer situation, sometimes you have busy months and low months. And doing a website is front loaded, and they didn't pay extra. That was built into their year-long contract. I'm like, so in those low months, you're still paying back that website. That was
Yes,
not a cheap endeavor. And
that's right.
so explaining that to your clients is so amazingly helpful. I mean, they could have had that. I had that client for 4 or 5 years, and COVID, that's when we parted ways. We couldn't come together with where it was. But just thinking they could have kept this for such a long time.
Well, they
And
forgot to talk about what they delivered. And here's what's really important, because again, we've got to remember this, they're the buyers, right?
mm-hmm.
And here's why this mattered.
Yeah.
Right. So you have to sell why it mattered, because when a buyer's making a decision, they're looking at, is the investment worth the trade, is the gain worth the dollar? And so the why it matters is actually the difference. And
Mm-hmm.
so I always tell because I work with a lot of creative agencies, and I'm like, don't just, 4 minimums for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I delivered 3 blog posts. We updated the websites. We did like the nuts and bolts for
Sure.
deliverable, but the deliverable enabled this to happen on your sales team, this number of phone calls, this much revenue is created out of it. So these are all commercial assets
Mm-hmm.
that are used to create revenue for you. And they're like, okay,
Your
I'll keep
outcomes,
writing a
your
check.
impact. Yes.
You have to
Very.
do that. And I know anytime we don't and we get lazy with it, we get a really uncomfortable lesson.
Yes.
Somebody walks and we're like, or somebody goes and hires somebody for something you could do. Because again, somebody only knows you for what they've recently engaged with you on. And it's
Yes.
up to us to constantly be selling. And there's nothing more heartbreaking when someone says, I didn't know I could hire you for that. And I have clients that, I speak for a living. And I said, I can absolutely help you on the speaking side,
Mm-hmm.
how to use the talk, how to create the talk, how to deliver the talk. And they're like, I hired a speaker coach. I'm like, what were you thinking? They're like, it didn't occur to me that I could ask you for that. And I thought, that's on me, because I wasn't selling the capability. I also wasn't selling, how do you use my services effectively to make that decision you made
Right.
right? And how do I make that ROI even higher?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And if I can make that ROI even higher, not only does it make the client love me, the client talks about me, the client's positive about me, they bring referrals to me, and that's a lifetime win.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So make the effort.
Yep.
And those are all pieces we learn. And I will tell you this, they're pieces you can be taught. That's one of the things we do.
Very good. So we need to wrap up really soon, but I want to ask you, what's the most effective marketing strategy to finding those high quality clients?
The first thing is to tell people you're in business
Okay.
and the result you stand for. Because you've got to remember, people don't buy processes, they don't buy programs, they don't buy logos. You need to get really clear, this is my North Star and this is the result I stand for. And this is who I am. The number one thing that people hire is your opinion.
Mm,
So you've got to be clear with what your opinion is. And I always call it a North Star. It's
mhm.
like, I get this result and this is how I believe about it. This is the thing that will distinguish you in the marketplace. And when you combine that with just simple conversation, a lot of people will say, I always want thinking clients. So I'm always really clear. I stand for this North Star. We have 4 or 5 ways you can get there. But you can listen to me really easily through a lot of events like this one or the events we run, and you're going to do your values and mine align?
Mhm.
And if you do, you're going to move towards us. And one day I hope that it's a frank conversation of, I need support. But what matters most is that people hire you for your opinion of how to create a set solution. So when you are talking about who is your buyer and what's the intersection point, you got to be really clear. What's the result you stand for?
Great. Great. Well, we do have to wrap up this. I think we could speak for hours and swap stories and it'd be very
We
fun.
sure could.
So make sure if you're watching at home or wherever you're watching, down below this video, there is a link to Christine's free gift, which is 25 ways to attract an audience of buyers. So not shoppers or tire kickers or but buyers. So download that now. And then also there below there is a VIP link. So if you have not yet purchased your VIP package, I encourage you to do so. It is just $37 now and gives you access to these amazing speakers all week forever. No expiration dates. You can watch at your leisure. You can take your notes. You can get those downloads and really rev up your second act. So thank you so much for tuning in. And thank you, Christine. This has been amazing. Thank you so
My
much.
pleasure. Let's go, guys.
Yay.